Hello, dreamers of all ages, and welcome to Catch Us at the Castle.
Hey guys, I'm Ed Pizza.
And I'm Steph Sweets, and today on Catch Us in the Castle, we are talking about the mistakes that we have made when we've taken our kids to the parks, to Disneyland and Disney World. Maybe Ed has some for the other parks too. I don't know. We'll get into it. We like these things. I like these things to be a surprise. So we'll find out as we're talking through it, what are the mistakes that we have made? But before we do that, you can catch me, besides here at Catch Us in the Castle, on Steph Parkside on Instagram. And then you can find Ed at Pizza in Motion on all of the different social media sites. Alrighty, Ed. I think we first need to talk about your sweatshirt.
God, I was hoping. I realized after we got started, I'm like, is she gonna remember to talk about the sweatshirt or not? So for folks that don't know, Steph and I are part of a group text thread titled the Disney Merch Enabler Society. It's a very sorted group of folks who buy way too much Disney stuff. And I had held out for a whopping, I don't know, like 3 weeks in the new year without buying any Disney merch. And then I found this really incredible San Francisco sweatshirt. I'll stand up a little bit for folks who are watching the video.
So cool.
Yeah. And it even comes with this cute little San Francisco logo on the sleeve. And for folks that don't know or are listening, San Francisco is the pretty decent, quick service option at Disneyland. There's even a little Baymax store that my wife found a couple of things in this past time. But let's see, I'm not going to remember the names of them all, but there's an Asian restaurant, there's the Boudin Bakery, there's Ghirardelli Chocolate, there's a taco place. I feel like maybe there's one more.
There's an Asian place, and then there's Miss Cass Cafe. So it's more like a food court, and there's also an alcohol stand in the middle.
Yeah, and plenty of seating. Might take a little bit of time to find a larger table together, but there's a lot of seating there. All stuff that you can order ahead of time and have waiting for you, and a fun little area to hang out at Disneyland.
Yeah, there's something for everyone there. And so it's a great place to go when you've got a big group because everyone can mobile order their own thing, find a table, meet in the middle, and there's usually something for everyone that people like. And if nothing else, there's Ghirardelli around the corner. So yeah, it's a fun area, really fun. They've done a great job with the theming there. It's all kind of Baymax, of course, San Francisco themed. And so it's just a really fun place to hang out. And Ed did make it, I think, the longest maybe out of everyone in the group. But it was a slippery slope for him from what I hear.
I fell off hard. Yes. Yeah. The suitcase, I had to sit on the suitcase to zip it up to get it home. I did buy more than just the sweatshirt. I actually don't remember all the stuff I bought. I might have bought two. I did buy 2 sweatshirts. I bought 2 sweatshirts and a t-shirt at a minimum. And I might have bought more that I don't remember. But as I mentioned to you in pre-show, it's just this weird sort of anomaly of merch. Disney World is really just not a place where you can buy a pullover hooded sweatshirt. They have plenty of zip-ups, but for whatever reason, they don't do hoodies. And I'm a hoodie guy, and I like the pullover variety. I don't like the zipper kind. I'm not a zipper guy. And Disneyland, that's their jam. Seems like every time I walk through, there's another one that I'm like, ooh, I got to have that. So here we are.
Yeah, I'm wondering because when I'm at Disney World, I'm seeing lots of hoodies. I have probably more hoodies from Disney World than I do just. But I'm always doing the Spirit jerseys, it seems like, from Disneyland as well. So, yeah, lots of fun. Okay, should we get into our list?
Yes, these are going to be fun. So for folks that maybe haven't listened or watched the previous list episodes with Steph and I, Steph likes a good surprise. So I don't know what's on her list. She doesn't know what's on mine, and we may have some crossovers. We'll see.
Yeah. Yep, I'm sure we have crossovers. We probably made the same mistakes somewhere.
I'm sure we have.
Yeah. Why don't you start first?
All right. So going back to my very first Disney World trip with kids, but man, this is going to sound incredibly bougie to say it this way, but the mistake we made was only booking a VIP guide for our first day and having no plans on what to do for the rest of the trip. This was back many moons ago when a VIP guide was like $200 an hour and you could bring 10 people. So we did the whole extended family thing. We had 3 families contributing to paying that, which I still think is an incredible deal when it was 200, not anymore. But I didn't know anything about Disney World. And so my plan was I talked to the person who schedules the guides, who's become a friend since then, and said, like, look, can this guide teach me during lunch what I need to do for the rest of the days? And she's like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. And then as I learned, I hadn't done any of the stuff I needed to do. And so we got there on that first day. We sat down at Liberty Tree Tavern for lunch. And I realized that I was horribly overmatched by Disney, and that I did not have all the things taken care of. And I just asked her to call the office and see if we could get the VIP guide extended for another couple days, which, by the way, turned out to be an incredible life decision, even though it makes me sound bougie as heck. But that VIP guide was a woman named Lauren, who has become an incredible personal friend. And I was fortunate and blessed and honored enough to do a reading at her wedding a couple of years ago. And she's been a 20-year lifelong friend since.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
I think that Disney must have learned their lesson, because they changed the pricing on the number of people that you could put in a group too, it sounds like.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You can still bring 10, but you're looking at prices closer to $600 or $700 an hour than $200 an hour. So it's a massive, massive difference. And then back then there were lots of things that weren't formalized, i.e., you didn't really tap into any of the parks, so you didn't really need to have park hoppers. You could buy cheaper tickets. There were a lot of ways to cut corners.
Yes.
A lot that don't exist anymore.
Yeah. I did not do my first VIP tour until 2025. So
Wow.
we're on different levels here of what we've
I
done
started
with our
out bougie,
families.
yeah.
For sure. All right. So one of the things that I have on my list that was a mistake was not, and these kind of go hand in hand, not empowering my kids with money. So spending money and then also snack money. Once I got smart and realized that I could just give them the budget for their snack money and for their spending money for the whole trip or the whole day, snack money was divvied up by day. Things went a lot better when they could just say, I'm hungry, this is what I want, rather than trying to push it until everyone was hungry or we all were going to eat a snack or a meal. We get hangry in our family. It comes from me, my genes. I will admit that. And so things just went a lot smoother once they were empowered and could make those decisions of when they were going to eat. And then also knowing that they had this amount of money to spend on souvenirs, and once it was gone, it was gone. I found them being a lot more thoughtful from the beginning rather than just asking the whole entire trip to buy things. They were thoughtful about it and really got things that they knew that they wanted and needed, and then they didn't ask anymore. I think that's the biggest thing that I learned is that my kids would ask often and a lot, can I have this thing? But then when I gave them a budget and said, this is what you can spend, you decide how you're going to spend it, there was a lot less asking and nagging.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that strategy. I'm sure we made that mistake. I know that at some point with our kids, we established a budget, and, typically I think, maybe we were a little bit more lenient with it, but we always set the budget a little bit lower than what we were comfortable spending because we wanted to make sure that we still had that magical moment at the end of the park.
Yeah.
But I agree. I mean, I think especially when you're talking about taking your kids to what some people would call once in a lifetime places, especially when you're going multiple times, I think it's a great way to start getting them introduced to budgeting.
Yeah.
And it's just a, good, easy life lesson.
Yeah, 100%. Your turn.
All right. Well, this one's a two-parter, and it's more Disney World specific, although it does apply to Disneyland in narrower scenarios. So, first off, if you have young kids, you just have to suck it up and rope drop for Disney World. It's just one of those things I really believe in, and so I think the mistake is sleeping in and not rope dropping and having the nap later for your kids during the day. But I'd also say too, specifically with Disney World, I think the direction you rope drop is also really key because there are a few rides, not Thunder Mountain, sorry.
Mine Train?
Thank you. Mine Train and Peter Pan are two rides where the lines go up really, really quickly. And for folks that maybe don't know this, you get to both of them, typically speaking, by heading right when you get to the main circle in front of the castle. And most people don't think about that. They think maybe the castle will be open, or maybe you can go to the left and go across the bridge down by Liberty Tree. But they queue everybody up for that area right near Teacups. There's a little shop there. I think it's called the Mad Hatter. There's a little snack shop right there. That's where you queue up. And that's the quickest way to get those rides. And if you go another direction, by the time they let the line through, you're already at an hour plus wait.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. At Disneyland, you can go the opposite direction of the rides that you want to be on because it's a much smaller distance to cover. And if the crowds aren't there, then you're golden. But I agree, even at Disneyland, you want to rope drop Peter Pan first if you have little kids. Unless, and that's one of the things on my list we'll go into that next, is not starting out with a dark ride. I made that mistake. My son still talks about starting out with Snow White's, which was then called Scary Adventure, as his first ride at Disneyland ever. Big mistake. So I was just trying to be efficient, and that was a short line. And so that's where we went. That was before I really had any major ride strategies in Disneyland. It was my first time back to Disneyland since I was a teenager. So made a lot of mistakes on that trip, but I would recommend starting in Fantasyland if you have younger kids and starting with something like Dumbo instead of a dark ride, and then hitting Peter Pan later, but also preparing your kids ahead of time for what the dark rides are like. Have them watch some ride videos. I couldn't do that. We couldn't do that when our kids were young, Ed.
Right.
Certainly, if I was a parent now, I would have them watch some ride through videos so that they know, and then when they get on the ride, they know what to expect. I have a friend who I joined in Disneyland who has grandkids. So I joined her and her grandkids and their parents. And when we were riding Pirates of the Caribbean or standing in the line, her little 3-year-old was talking about how he didn't want to go on it because it's scary, because it was dark in there. And so she talked him through it and said, remember, we watched this. Remember, this is what we're going to see. They're going to sing a song. Remember this song. And so then that calmed him down, and he loved that ride and talked about it apparently after they got home a lot. And so really taking the time to prepare kids for what they're going to see is very, very helpful.
Yeah, I agree with that. And sadly, I wish that was still a thing that you need to worry about in Magic Kingdom. The dark rides, for the most part, have moved on from Disney World. And the Princess meet and greet that took over what I think was a Snow White ride, is great if you have kids that aspire to meet the princesses, but it did take out a pretty sentimental ride for me. Just not they're not like super special rides. They're just memorable for me as a young kid.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I think even though, I mean, there's still Peter Pan and Magic
Mm-hmm.
Kingdom, and there's still Pirates and Haunted Mansion. So there's a few that parents, especially Peter Pan, because it's for kids. Winnie the Pooh still is a dark ride. That's for little kids.
Yeah, they brightened it up a bit in
Yes,
Disney
it's
World.
brighter in there, and it's still like you go inside somewhere where the kids aren't necessarily knowing what they're going to see. And I think that's the scary part for them a lot of times. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
What's next on your list, Ed?
Nap time.
Yeah.
For a long time at Disney, I had one speed, and I wanted to make sure that I maximized every single minute of the park day. And there's like we always planned to build in naps, to be clear, but I would be like, I bet you I can squeeze in just one more ride. And if you have kids and you've been through this before, you know that once you get past a certain point and they either get overly tired or they throw the tantrum, the nap is, at least with our kids, is likely out the window, and then you've really borked the rest of the day. So, I mean, you obviously have to know your kids, but I think even if they're in strollers, it's just a lot. And I think to some degree, it's not necessarily, maybe that their legs are tired, but I mean, Disney is sensory overload. There's a million different things going on. They're absorbing it all, especially if it's a first trip, meeting, characters that they absolutely love and all that stuff. And they just, if you want to maximize, you've got to pace yourself. And I think, finding a way to make sure you have downtime for younger kids during the day and making sure you do it before they melt down. I've made that mistake more times than I can count.
Yeah, we always push through too, from rope drop till close, even with our younger kids. And we were really fortunate because we didn't have any major meltdowns in the parks. We did always have a stroller and they did nap in it, especially when my youngest was a baby. I would either strap her to me and carry her around and she would sleep, and it worked out fine. That's my kids. It worked out fine for my kids. It doesn't always every kid. And as
Yeah.
my youngest has gotten older and she's more aware of all the sensory overload things, once she hit around 10, we had to start taking breaks. 12, I guess, was when we had to really start taking breaks for her during the day. And sometimes we have very short days in the parks, and that's fine too. So I totally agree with you that taking breaks and knowing your kids and what they can and can't do is the best strategy.
Yeah, we actually went really, really old with both kids with stroller. Again, mostly because of dad trying to maximize. And it was just, even when they were, 10 and almost didn't fit in the stroller, just resting their legs for the price of a Disney park ticket, I always felt was worth it to make sure we could maximize the day.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's one on my list, not a mistake that I've made, but that I've seen made, is a lot of people are against strollers for kids in the parks. I'll tell you, if you have little kids, you will either have them in a stroller or you will be carrying them because their legs just get tired. So it's up to you what your preference is and what you're most comfortable with. I never had problems. We did strollers for a long time too, just because it's nice for everybody. And then there was that place where my youngest wanted to tag along with her older brother and sister. And so if there were any behavior issues, I could always say, you're going to have to ride in the stroller if you can't stay with me, if you can't hold my hand, all of those types of
Yeah.
things. And so that worked out really well for us.
Yeah, that sort of brings up another thought process, and I don't want necessarily call this a mistake per se, but I would say if you're thinking about it, even though it's gotten harder to rent strollers and have them delivered to your resorts, I would give some consideration to thinking about stroller rental as opposed to packing yours and taking on airplanes. I sadly saw way too many casualties of airline checked bags or strollers that were soaked that didn't get put in a bag or stuff like that. And it's also another piece of stuff you have to manage in the airport. There are some stroller companies that will actually allow you to drop the stroller off at Orlando MCO on the way back through. And so you really just have to solve for what you're going to do with your kids when you get to your home airport.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I even one time had a stroller with a basket underneath it, a really inexpensive one, shipped to our resort in Florida. And then I left it there for somebody else to pick up because that on message boards and things, that happens a lot. And so
Oh,
it
yeah.
was very affordable. And then I knew I wouldn't have to lug it all the way. So I've done that too.
I like it. All right. What's
Yeah.
next on your list?
I feel like I've already done my next ones on my list. I'm talking a lot. How about you go?
All right. Character meetups. So I would just say that, and I think this is sort of like where the genesis for the episode came up. It was your suggestion on talking through character meetups. I
Yeah.
would say we didn't have a lot of character meetup fails. I think it was one of the things we figured out early on is that you want to tackle character meetups early in the day, in my opinion, and early in the trip. And we did have, one little faux pas that we ended up having to like pay our way through to solve it by, going into the parks an extra day when we missed a princess. And that taught me on all future trips I needed to be very prepared and locked and loaded on character meetups very early in the trip.
Yeah, the thing that I've learned the hard way with that one is just preparing your kids for what they're going to see, even if they've done it before. So my youngest, we had been taking to Disney World since she was a baby. She'd done character interactions. It never really occurred to me that I might need to have that conversation with her again. And then at some point, she got afraid of the character interactions. And so I think having age appropriate conversations before every trip, if you go often, or just before the big trip, maybe even show them some videos. My kids, as I was preparing for this, I of course asked my kids, like, what mistakes did we make? And they said that they just had no idea that the characters would be so big. Like, they didn't understand why Buzz was so big because
Hmm.
he was Andy's toy, and so that didn't make sense to them in their
Hmm.
minds. So showing them some pictures of how
Interesting.
big the kids are going to be in comparison to them and those types of things, the face characters versus not, and just what they can expect. And having it, even if they've been to Disney before, do it again before your next trip.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I didn't think about the sizing. That's an interesting one
I
that I
know,
didn't come up
right?
with.
That
Yeah.
never would have occurred to me. But
Yeah.
yeah, my kids were afraid of Buzz, and I could not figure out why. And I guess that's why.
They expected to look down at him.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah. So go
Uh,
ahead.
Me again?
I piggybacked again. So go ahead. Do
Okay.
you want
All
me to
right.
go and then you can piggyback if you have one?
I have 4 left. So how many do you
Okay. I
have?
don't have that many left either.
Okay. So I'll go with an easy one, which is make sure you have a rain plan every day. And this is much more important in Disney World than Disneyland because it feels like it rains almost every afternoon from March to October. But you got to have a rain plan because, sure, you can always buy overpriced ponchos, but if you're on a budget, that's not a fun thing to do. They're much cheaper on Amazon. But B, as we learned the hard way, ponchos don't cover shoes. And when shoes get wet and blisters happen, it goes downhill quickly from there.
It sure does. We have made that mistake as well. Yeah. I learned really quickly the last few years that my youngest needs to always have a dry change of socks just in case they get wet on a ride. She always just needs to have dry socks. That's really important to her. So, and even sometimes I talked with this about on my trip recently with friends about how if you need to buy socks, it's okay. Like if
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
catastrophe in the middle of the day, a wardrobe where it's going to make someone miserable because they're wet, Disney has clothes. And if it's going to be the difference between making or breaking your vacation, spend the $50, get the new jogging suit, get the new socks, get the new whatever you need to so that it can be enjoyable. Because at that point, you've spent so much money,
yeah.
$50 to make or break the vacation really is worth it.
Yep. Nope, I agree. 100%.
All right, you want me to go with one?
I do.
Okay. Determine the most important rides, snacks, like the most important things, entertainment, parades, whatever it is for each person in the family, and have a discussion ahead of time so that when you're doing the thing that's most favorite for the sibling, everyone knows that like this is what we're doing for our sibling, even though you don't enjoy it. We're doing this for our sibling. And when it's your turn, because you're going to have a turn,
Right.
everyone's going to be understanding and participating and not complaining. It just goes a lot smoother, I think, when the kids know what the expectations are. And that's definitely a mistake that we made for sure, is not making sure that each of them understood what was important to everybody else in the family.
I like that. I like that. That's good. And especially if you have we have a boy and a girl. I mean, clearly there were the periods of time where the interests did not intersect very often.
Yes. Yes. And it's okay to split up too. We did that too when we did the Cinderella Castle dining. I made arrangements for my son to go with his grandpa to a Star Wars thing, and that worked out great for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, if you like, this is one of the things I think, like when when you have extended family, I think you can be really flexible, and I think that can make a huge difference. And don't be afraid to split up if you're two parents as well. But I think sometimes that's fine. Not everybody has to do every ride. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, it's okay. But if you're a single mom going to the park, like some of us are,
Right.
definitely
That's where it's great
having
to have a
those,
grandparent.
it is 100%. And also having those conversations about expectations, because you're not always able to split up. And so
Yeah.
having those conversations ahead of time about this is what we're doing for this sibling and this is what this sibling's most important thing is. And so that everybody can be really happy and practice being happy for the other siblings when things are going their way.
Love it. Well, my next one is, much more Disney World centric than Disneyland, but still just a good tip overall. And it's probably, I would say, one of my biggest annoyances with Disney World. And I mean, to some degree, I guess I kind of understand it. But if you want the best restaurants at Disney World, especially ones that involve characters, even if the food is kind of, you gotta book ahead of time. And quite frankly, you generally speaking have to book at the beginning of your booking windows. And so you're talking about deciding what you want to eat for lunch or dinner 2 months ahead of leaving for your trip. And this is one of those benefits of being on site where you've got a little bit more flexibility to book them for your entire trip. But I think so many people show up to the parks and don't realize that they were supposed to book their dining 2 months ago, which is, to me, crazy, but very, very necessary, especially with more and more people adopting mobile ordering. Even some of the, some of the quick service stuff. I mean, you might jump on and it's, half an hour before when you want to eat lunch, and the next time slot is 3 hours later. So it's you have to have a plan for dining, and you have to have a plan a couple months ahead of time. And then for any quick service at Disney World, you got to have a plan every day before you get started.
Yeah, and that definitely is for Disneyland as well. I would say, especially if you have kids with you, right when you get into the park, get those lightning lane reservations at Disneyland because you can't get those until you scan in. The next thing is that somebody needs to be working on the predetermined plan and or dining option, ordering everybody's food. And then at that time of day, you'll be able to pick whichever pickup time you want and then work around that. You can always go in and change the time so you're not locked and loaded on that. You can change it and adjust it as you need to if you have lightning lanes or you just aren't hungry at that time or you need to eat earlier if there's availability. But I've made the mistake too many times of waiting until I'm hungry, and then the wait time is an hour or two later, which is miserable.
It is. That's for sure. And I think the other thing too that maybe most folks don't know, and now that I think about this, I'm not sure if this applies to Disneyland. I think it does, but you'll correct me. Not only can you modify, but in most situations you can cancel a quick service order. So sometimes it can be the right strategy to place an order without really understanding if that's what your kids are even going to want to eat, because kids have a tendency to change their minds. But having a placeholder doesn't necessarily mean you're going to lose the money.
Yes, 100%. Absolutely. Good point. It's a very good point. All right. Do you want to hear one of my other thoughts from my kids?
I think it's on you. I think it's on you.
So one of the things that they said, my son said that he appreciated that we did do was putting an emphasis on really good athletic shoes and preparing ahead of time. So before we went on our first Disney trip and every time after that, I would make sure that they started preparing by walking a lot every day, because when you're doing 5, 6, 10 miles in a day, it can be really hard to go from nothing. And so breaking in those shoes, getting them way ahead of time, breaking them in by actually making them walk around in them, that was something that my kids really appreciated and something that we've continued as a tradition ever since.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I learned this from Marty and Mike and Sway, our friends. And obviously these things didn't exist when my kids were young, but Hoka's and On Clouds are two different brands of shoes that are sort of like ultra cushy. I don't know a better way to describe them. I tried Hoka's, they didn't work for my feet. Unbelievable how much of a difference On Clouds have made for me in the parks. And I know these are very situational. Everybody's a little bit different with feet and how they feel and all that stuff. I can't tell you, like, used to be like on the third day of a Disney trip, my knees would be really, really sore, and mostly just from like the standing around part. Now, I mean, I can go nonstop. So having the right shoes absolutely does make a difference. And, those are pricey shoes for sure, but they've really made a difference in how long I can go in the parks.
Yeah, it does make all the difference in the world.
So my next one, it really involves either A, if you're planning, a longer trip, once in a lifetime trip, any of those sorts of categories, or B, anything in Disney World from, call it, late April to, mid-October. We made this mistake a number of times of putting something on the schedule every day, usually tied to park tickets. I would just say, whether it's folding in a water park day or just having a day where you hang out at the pools, the resort, if you're going to be at parks for more than 3 days, in my opinion, with younger kids, you need a day where they can just decompress, and they don't have to be on the schedule all day long. So I would strongly suggest a rest day. It's definitely something that we ran afoul of early on because I always wanted to push through every day.
Yeah, I agree. And we never did rest days. And here I am. I went to Port Orleans. That's where we typically stayed when my kids were younger. I was just there not too long ago. And
Yeah,
I walked around with my dad and my sister, and I said, I've never explored the resort like this before. I've never been to the pools because we
yeah,
just did not. We were powering through the parks. So take
yeah.
advantage of some of those other things, especially if you're staying on site. For sure. I agree with that one, Ed.
Here's a question for you because I know you
Yeah.
were there, and I don't know if you did answer this. I'm not sure. Did you have beignets while you were at Port Orleans?
Yes, I did.
Yes. They're for
Yeah.
for Disney, snack treats. They're surprisingly good.
They're so good. And I would even say that they're better than the Disneyland beignets. I know people are gonna not, or they're gonna not like hearing that. But they're,
Uh,
yeah. Uh, I'll give it to
Surprisingly good.
Disneyland for churros, but I think the beignets have to go to French Quarter, Port
Yeah,
Orleans French Quarter.
they're surprisingly good.
Yeah, yeah. And they've built that out. It's all bigger now. There's a whole, it used to just be a little window, and
Yep,
now it's a whole big area with seating in it too.
yep, yep.
So, yeah. Okay, so my last one is one that we alluded to on our last episode, which was making sure that you leave a budget in your bank account for walking, in your physical bank account for walking at the end of the day. So that's one thing that all of my kids mentioned is how, especially at Disneyland, they hated the long walk back to the hotel at the end of the day. We were often staying a mile and a half away. We never generally, I don't think that we ever stayed under a mile away. And it just felt so long to their little
Mm,
legs. And so now you have an option to do an Uber or a Lyft to get back
right.
that last little part, but always letting your kids know that there's going to be a long walk at the end of the day, if you can stay closer and stay in maybe the Fairfield right across the street. You don't have to stay on site to not have that long walk. The Fairfield is actually closer than the Disneyland Hotel is to the main gate. There's the Hojo right there. There's a lot that are pretty close that would keep you closer within the walking distance. Several have Holiday Inns right there too. So
Yeah,
just keep that in mind.
I think that's a great last suggestion of yours. And my last one, I really started to think about things I could comment on for, outside of the U.S. And, I think it also folds a little bit into the U.S., although I think Disney World, more so maybe a little than Disneyland, does a good job of democratizing, mediocre food options that most kids will eat on a given day. Like you can find chicken tenders in a lot of different places. But overseas, I would say you absolutely have to research the restaurants. We found a lot of restaurants that weren't great at Tokyo Disney. Same thing at the Disneyland, Euro Disney in Paris. And then there were just, cuisines that like the food was of a good quality. It just wasn't food that my kids would eat or maybe I wouldn't eat. And so I think, putting a little bit of time into researching your restaurants is worth it.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Thank you. I've heard other people say that besides you actually, that they struggled with the food in Tokyo. So
Yeah.
it's good to know. My last tip is really thinking through your expectations and setting expectations. Know that things are going to go wrong. Know that you're going to have to make adjustments and being flexible. It's not going to be a perfect vacation. Even if this is your one and only, which we know, Ed, you and I, that once they've gone one time, but even if right now it feels like your one and only Disney trip, make sure that you understand it's not going to be perfect and things, you'll have to make adjustments on the go and just be ready for it. And it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay if you need to cut a day short. It's okay if you need to go a little bit later to let your kids sleep in. If it's going to make a bigger difference on the other end for them, then absolutely just take it day by day and be flexible.
What a great place to end it because I think
Yeah.
setting expectations is such a huge part of going to the parks. I mean, at the end of the day, if you rode every single ride you wanted to ride except for one, or you didn't get the this or the that. I mean, you're still luckier than so many kids that never even get to go to Disney World or Disneyland in their lifetimes. And so I think trying to help set expectations, because it's so often something is going to take a left-hand turn. Rides break all the time. Lines are too long, all that sort of stuff. Heck, our very first Disney trip, they canceled our flights the morning of. And so, I lost my entire first day of dining reservations. Had changed hotels on the fly, all that stuff. Like, that stuff happens.
Yeah,
and so,
it does.
To your point, setting those expectations will hopefully save you from stuff further down the road.
Yeah. And not letting it ruin your whole entire vacation. Just keep swimming, as Nemo says.
Just keep swimming.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's a great place to pin it. We've already talked about what we want to do for what will likely be our next episode.
Yes.
We're going to talk about Disney's new credit card, and I have a box over here in the corner of my office from D23 that we're going to open up for folks to see too. So
Ooh, fun.
Lots of great stuff coming. Obviously, be more merch reveals given the two of us and how often we buy. But until the next time we record, you guys know you can always catch us at the castle.